Traditionally, our owners have got very, very thick skin. Just forget for a moment, put your own opinions to one side, or whether you think they've done a good job or a bad job. For nigh on 25 years at West Ham United and Birmingham City, the fans have given them absolute dog's abuse. In fact, at both clubs, at one game or another, fans have actually clambered over their seats to try and get to them. And by and large, a lot of the comments they've brushed off. It's been water off a duck's back. They've got rhinoceros hide. Their skin is so thick, and this has largely been a hallmark of their tenure at West Ham. And I've certainly felt the longer their stewardship of the club goes on, the thicker their skin has become. But I think they're rattled. And it was really something that I saw on Talksport yesterday that convinced me. If I just take you back 3, 4 years, the owners were quite prolific in the news. I was just looking through some old clips and somebody's pieced together, I don't know where it's come from, a wonderfully produced video which sort of summarises Gold Sullivan and Brady's 10 years in charge. But it made me think how prolific they used to be in the media. You know, it was David Sullivan talking about bringing in a world-class striker, and Jim White's there on the Upton Park pitch saying, oh, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Jamie Vardy or this, that and the other? And I thought, actually, they used to be on Talksport. They used to be on Sky Sports News and on the radio and just newspapers quite a lot. And I think they got so much stick that they stopped doing interviews and they scaled it back. I think that was largely because David Sullivan kept on putting his foot in his mouth. I think David Gold was tweeting too much, and Jack Sullivan was very, very prominent and prolific on Twitter. And I think it got to the point where they just scaled it back completely, and they shut up. Now, whilst they didn't do what would be classed as official interviews, David Sullivan would certainly leak news that he thought was to his benefit. So, for instance, more recently, it would be a case of, we don't have any money at the moment. And when you are drip fed that information, it was also, the story is then told that we spent money under Pellegrini on Haller and Felipe Anderson and whatnot. And the narrative generally gets spun back 10 years to the fact that they saved the club and really we should be grateful. And West Ham would be in a mess and £100 million worth of debt. You've heard all this stuff before. But it was only very recently, I think either the last week or two, when David Sullivan, and David Gold, who were actually quite approachable, by the way. Whilst they won't do official interviews, if you ask them a question, you might not get the answer you want, but they will generally reply to a few people. So it might be a case of, if you remember, I did a video, I contacted David Sullivan and said, David, what is the situation with Thomas Souček's contract? He got back to me and he said, we're signing Souček as long as we don't get relegated. That's the clause. And he was quite forthright, and he gave forth some information. That's all been closed, those avenues, so there's no more information to get anymore. And I thought, okay, well, that's fine. That was a sign of them being a little bit rattled, but I thought it was maybe a sign of them being a little bit more thin-skinned than usual. We're not talking, we're not doing anything. But you've got to realise there's been such a momentum and a head of pressure building up from the fans, and then the media joining in, and then the players have now joined in, that I think the situation came to a head, very much so. Yesterday morning on Talksport, I really saw what was a rattled ownership. And I know, yes, you shouldn't listen to Talksport, and we're only feeding them, and so on and so forth. And Jim White's just a shock jock, and they only do it to get people to phone in. That all being said, this wasn't made up, what happened yesterday. Because before Jim White started his show, which I think starts at about 10 in the morning, he started his show straight away, and it was with Simon Jordan and it was with Danny Murphy. And straight away he said, I've just got off the phone to one of the West Ham owners. It was David Sullivan. He said today, basically, David Sullivan, they feel that they've been hung out to dry. They feel that it's a little bit unfair, the criticism. And Jim White, once again, he holds West Ham fans in complete disdain. We've discussed this before. But I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Number one, if you've spoken to David Sullivan, then usually you will be told, this is just a source, don't say you've spoken to me, or he'll just have a word in his ear. I think Jim White speaks to David Sullivan on a regular basis. But this was an officially unofficial quote or comments from him. David Sullivan wanted this news to be known. And Jim White then asked him the question, would you sell West Ham? And the answer was, not at the moment. Things would have to get a bit worse before we could say, well, that's not an unequivocal no. And what I think has prompted this this sort of conversation between Jim White and David Sullivan, I believe, is Trevor Sinclair's tweet where he basically said, if you're not going to invest in the team, sell up. Because I think it was, whilst big things have happened, whilst I think, you know, the protests, I think Mark Noble's tweet, whilst lots of that's happened, sometimes it's just a last straw that breaks the camel's back. Trevor Sinclair, very articulate, very good. He's sort of building his presence on TV and on radio. And as a pundit, let's call him a pundit, he's very much backed West Ham in this instance. And we're all grateful for it. Because too often, when Mark Noble's spoken out, a lot of people are saying he should have shut up. Other people speak out, they should have shut up. Well, I don't believe that. I don't think anything gets done if you shut up. And I think Trevor Sinclair has spoken from the heart. He's spoken like a fan. And I like Trevor Sinclair saying it because he doesn't really have any dog in the fight in this instance. When Mark Noble said it, almost Mark Noble's too close to the action in many respects. But from an outsider's point of view, someone that's played with a club, someone that has an overview of football in general, someone that's still a coach in the game, and he runs an academy. Oh, good on you, Trevor. And I think that has been the final straw that's prompted David Sullivan to ring up Jim White and say, you need to address this on your radio station, which I think is exactly what he's done. Now, we know that West Ham are not beyond phoning up a radio station or television company and saying, we would like you to do this. In fact, in many respects, that's what they do with websites, what they do with everybody. They give you some news and say, I want you to run X, Y, and Z. Now, I don't think it was quite what happened with the Sunday supplement, which, as I said before, wasn't a good look because it came across as bullying. And I think it turned a lot of the media against them. But when they contacted the Sunday supplement to say, you know, you better amend that statement, you better retract it, and you better, we want you to say X, Y, and Z, say what we have invested in the club and what we've done, talk about our training facilities, and so on and so forth. This was slightly different because I don't think they were holding Jim White in contempt. I think they were just trying to change the narrative because if you look at the balance of the scales, actually, they were really starting to lose. Because, as I say, you had the fans, you had the players now, and you had the media. So it was, I felt, really a clumsy attempt by Jim White at propaganda. But, I mean, what's new there? What I found massively interesting, and I don't know what happened, and I'm not sure we did find out what happened, because I tried to stay tuned to the radio station, but then he went on to talk about Everton and rightly so, other things that happened in the first Premier League fixture list, and rightly so. It's not all about West Ham. I understand that. But there was a point whereby Jim White and Danny Murphy and Simon Jordan, who in many respects, I think Simon Jordan is absolutely fantastic. In many respects, I think the best thing about TalkSport, I think he's articulate, I think he's lucid, I think he cuts through the crap, and I think he's plain talking, and he understands the game of football. And a lot of the time, he very much brings Jim White to heel. I think he controls Jim White. He tells Jim White when Jim White's talking nonsense, which I think is certainly something he does quite a lot, and something that somebody needs to control him, because I do think he runs away with himself. And I sort of understand it. If he is close friends with David Sullivan, he's close friends with David Gold, then he's going to be biased. He's compromised. His journalistic integrity is going to be, as I say, he's compromised somewhat. You can understand he's going to want to side with his friends, and I think that's what he does. So he sides with his friends, and he can't hide the contempt in his voice when he speaks about West Ham fans. But something interesting happened. During the rest of the show, Simon Jordan left his seat in the booth or whatever it was, wherever they're recording it. You know, you got all the microphones. They're all around the microphones. There's 3 of them around there, whatever it. Simon Jordan actually got up and left because Simon Jordan got a phone call from one of the West Ham owners, clearly David Sullivan again. How rattled must he have been? Because clearly he had heard the way the show was going. which was very much Jim White explaining things from the owner's perspective. But Simon Jordan wasn't really having any of it at all. Danny Murphy, I thought, was far more sympathetic to the West Ham fans than he was towards the owners. And I felt the narrative wasn't going as the owners might have liked. So I don't know what happened in that phone call. I'm not sure if we ever found out. And I'd like to know if somebody else knows, because I certainly wasn't going to go back and listen to it all again. And I didn't listen to the very end of the show. The thing is 3 hours long. And we've all got other things to do in life. But how rattled must you have been to make a second call? I'm going to labour that point again. And this is why I think they're rattled. David Sullivan's got up in the morning and he's phoned Jim White to give him some information. And Jim White would have said, David, is this a private conversation or is this something for us to talk about on the radio? David Sullivan would have given his permission. David Sullivan would have said, yes, speak about it on the radio. Speak about it. I want this. What do you want me to say? Okay, I want you to say that, we feel it's unfounded. We feel it's unjust. So having done that, just imagine being in that position and feeling you have to phone back a second time to make your case even clearer to Simon Jordan, who of course has owned a football club before. And Simon Jordan has even admitted that he has had terrible times with Gold Sullivan. Although, in the interest of balance, he's also said that any chairman would have tried to take on the Olympic Stadium, which is not. I don't think that's massively the issue here on this, by the way. It's not just the Olympic Stadium; it's the absolute hash they've made of it and what they promised to get us there, which Jim White conveniently always leaves out. He says fantastic stadium and he misses all the context. But bearing in mind, he's already phoned up this in the morning. He then phones back less than an hour later because he's not happy how it's going. Bearing in mind he's already closed down all avenues to most other media outlets. It did make me think, this guy is really rattled. The club are really rattled, because that shows a sort of a confused thinking, doesn't it? That shows complete uncertainty. We're not speaking, no more. We're closing all our views, not discussing anything anymore. Oh, actually, I'll just do one. We'll talk sport. All right, maybe I'll just do. I'll just say something again because I want to add to that. And I just looked at it and I thought, well, hold on. Number one, you're rattled. And if you are rattled, and you are as confused as I think, just make it easy on yourself. Come out and make a statement, or better still, do an interview. Not with Jim White, by the way, with a proper journalist. Because to try and pick and choose, he's picking a friendly journalist in Jim White. He's clearly got something to say. He's clearly got something he wants to get off his chest. But he's not brave enough to actually sit down in front of somebody who's going to question him properly. And we still wait for the explanation of everything that's happened. And I mean everything. Because the club has changed direction completely from what was promised. They never told us they were changing direction. And this is something else that Jim White in particular is missing out. It's not like we were promised the earth, and then when they couldn't quite do that and deliver it, they turned around and said, we can't actually, let's rein it back in, let's pull back, let's reevaluate, let's reassess. These are now our goals. We apologise for not being able to do what we promised. However, this is now how we're going to run West Ham, and we're going to do it along these lines. It's absolute radio silence up until the point. I just don't get it. It's complete mixed messages. Even the comment about would you sell? Not yet, not at the moment. Things would have to get worse. They're not quite bad enough yet. What is that? Aside from an invitation for everybody to make things so bad that it reaches the level at which they'll consider walking away. A bit of a jumbled video. Mate, I'm as confused by it as they are. But that smacks of desperation. Somebody that doesn't care, and I do think for a long time they've not cared. I think they've had thick skin. Water off a duck's back, like I said. Somebody that doesn't care doesn't get involved. To tell everybody you're not speaking to them, then to phone the radio station, then not be happy what they're saying, and then phone in again, shows that they're rattled. Rattled enough to want to get their message out there, but not confident enough to go on the phone line and use their own voice to convey that message to fans. Weird.